Welcome to this workshop in preparation for our Congregational seminar. We will start from the presentation Sister Chiki is presenting to us, and it starts from the definitions on culture and evangelization. The culture and the gospel is not the same. However, the gospel is always rooted, and the kingdom is being announced always through the culture. The gospel is lived by people vinculated to the culture, and the construction of the kingdom of God cannot be done apart of the culture and cultures. The first point is to realize that the culture is very important. In the experience of sharing the life, and later we will do it by deepening the connection between the culture. When we will start thinking on, we will have to connect it to the charism. This is the slide in English for those who are following the English version and translation. The concept of the culture has been changing long years. In the 19th century, it was developed the theory on culture by sociologists, by anthropologists, and they came to the conclusion that the culture is explaining various aspects of the society, and it presents a totality that reflect elements of symbols, the elements of rituals, of relationship, of the persons. Later, with the postmodern criticism, other authors, they have started to emphasize the interpretation of the culture. So the culture is not more just find. This slide is only in English because it is not very important, but it is to be aware of the concept of the culture is evolving from the very beginning, for the first approach to the culture, and till now the understanding it is having accent on interpretation of the culture. The first scholars on culture were Europeans, and they have been visiting places in other places of the world, and they have been judging the places and the culture. In the second moment, in the perspective of postmodernity, it is said that the culture is not easy to understand. It's very important to enter the culture, listen to the people, and trying to understand their experience of culture. It's not enough to judge externally. I wanted to reach to this definition on the culture. As you see, according to this author, Lazar Stanislaus Martin Weffling, the culture is the life of the group of people. So this reflects the symbols, system of significances, of the meanings, of knowledge of the transmission of symbolic codes on behaviors and habits and traditions, mythology, narrations. The culture reflects also the strategies of adaptation, because there are elements they are raising out of the efforts that people are making in order to adapt, in order to overcome difficulties and the resources they find or they find not. So depending on the place, on the geography of the place where they are, of the climate where they are, there are many cultural elements that have been adapted to the people because they are habitual ways of adapting to the reality or to, to link to the reality. Everyone is conditioned by the place where we live, where we develop. Fundamentally, the people is creating culture. Only human beings can live culture and transmit it by the communication or by imitation. This is the way we want to understand the culture. We have to enter in contact with the people. This is the code of meanings, of the understanding that is beyond the behavior. It will not explain fully the behavior. It will be a ground of the behaviors, of the things, of the ideas, of the ideas. They contain the norms of society which regulate the life. You can see it in the slide in English. The culture is what helps us to experience the world, to see the world, and to relate to one another. The culture comprehends material aspects, for instance, tools, dressing, eating, decorations. The culture contains moral values, virtues. The culture contains symbols like music, language, rituals, narration. The culture includes institutions, for instance, the politics, the family, the economy. The ethnicity is what we are. The culture is how do we live. And I would like to invite you in pause if you can mention or think one element of those mentioned now that for you is somehow signifying, recollecting the symbol of your culture, the symbol of your... I will stop for a moment and see you. And if you want to mention any aspect that is connected to your culture, so most welcome and share. Somebody wants to share, most welcome. You can give an example. Sister Sandy from Peru is telling, I'm Peruvian. We have a custom for the celebration of the All Saints in all countries. Okay, Sandy introduces herself now. I'm from South Peru, but now I'm working in Argentina. So coming back to my sharing, in my culture, in the day of the All Saints, we have traditions that are coming from the Incas culture. This is of the Red Indios. We have the celebration for All Saints to recall the departed people. We do the small altar in our houses, and in this altar we put a picture of the departed of our family, and we remember the food she or he liked eating, and we make him present or make her present, and we recall, and we feel that the departed one visits us and comes to us during the night. And the 1st of November we prepare the place where to receive him or her. We pray together in the family, and after all, the food we prepared, it remains for the beloved one, but also we eat, we taste it, because we share in. In many houses of Peru, it is something common. I think in the northern Argentina and in Bolivia and in some other countries, the same tradition is there. Even in Colombia, in some places. Thank you, Sandy. Somebody more would like to share? Please off your mic, and somebody else would like to share. Most welcome. Lupita is raising the hand. I am Guadalupe. I am known as Lupita. I am Mexican, and at present I am in the community of Miami. Chiki has said, according to the regions, the traditions are being developed in our families. In Mexico is a country which is very rich of cultures. But I would like to present one cultural symbol that represents us. I think you know it. It is Our Lady of Guadalupe. Despite of the diversity in the whole country, the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe is a highest expression and representativeness of Mexican nation. I believe that this sign, and also by this seminar, I am discovering elements of my culture too. Out of what I have experienced, I am aware that Our Lady of Guadalupe, for all Mexicans, not only in Mexico, is the mother, is the companion, and from the very childhood we grow in this awareness. So we all feel the protection of her motherhood, of her care, and she brings the presence of God in the midst of the people. This is one of the very symbols of our culture and our experience in Mexico. For me, culture too. Somebody more? I am Anita from India. No need to translate, right?
Experiences with guests, and later we will have together meal. So it's The culture is that welcoming the guest who enters is a respect to them as it's a divine respect to the person. Washing the feet, dirty feet. Usually the head of the family, the lady, washes the feet with water, and they touch with the soap and water, and some families they apply oil as well.
Rani, puedes seguir, sí.
See, okay. It's the hospitality to the guest who comes to the house, and usually the head of the family, the lady, washes the feet of the guest. They have a special vessel as well as special container for this. With soap and water, and they apply some part of India they apply oil as well. So it's a divine respect to the person. So giving respect as God enters to the family.
¿Quiere que traduzca?
Now,
Para el
Sí.
español.
is translating the same
Bien, lo que nos comparten las
Spanish
hermanas
what
de
we have
India
heard in English,
es
so
la
no need,
tradición
just enjoy
de
the
que cuando llega
Spanish,
un huésped a
words.
la comunidad, la madre de la familia le recibe y hace un lavatorio de sus pies como un respeto divino a la persona que viene. En cierta manera, esa persona, ese huésped, es como la presencia divina que ha llegado a la casa y por lo tanto este gesto hace conciencia de eso. No sé si lo traduje bien, Rani.
We have the witness of Nestorin, the sister from Congo, provincial superior of Africa. Chiki was telling that the culture is rooted in the people, but also the gospel is being rooted in the people. If how to bring the culture to the gospel and the gospel to the culture. Jesus was also a member of a family. In Congo, the family is being shared always in with all members of the family. For example, it is very possible in Congo that a child will live with the uncle, with the auntie, because they are part of the same family. Other dimension is the aspect of the culture within the liturgy. The liturgy in Congo is being adapted to the culture. For Africans, the dance is element of the living of the culture, and it was brought to the liturgy. Even in Rome, there is a possibility to participate in the African liturgy by dancing and enjoying the. So if you have no dance on the Mass, you will really suffer. The music, the dance are very important as expression of the humans, and it is connected to the experience of religion and of God.
Como en África vivir es también la danza, esto es muy vivente en la liturgia. Por eso se ha adaptado, aprobado también en Roma la liturgia africano-congoleña, que si no hay la danza, la liturgia sea como si
sirve.
es una muerte.
Muy bien.
Que quería añadir de la cultura en la religiosidad con la liturgia.
Muy bien, muy bien.
Gracias.
Muy importante, la música, la danza, eso, y eso conecta con Dios.
Eso conecto con Dios, sí.
A la persona de esa cultura, ¿no? Muy bien. Bueno, entonces creo que tenemos bastante claro de qué se trata. Vamos a continuar entonces.
Another element that we shouldn't forget is the aspect of the history. The history also influences the culture. It influences the persons and the peoples, and for example, how the people understand the authority, the church, the institutions. For example, how in the countries which are Western, there is a history on the governance that is monarchic. The most of the cases, they had a dialectic relationship with the church. This is the situation which the founders lived. But there are other countries that they had have another experience of institutions and governance. For example, they have lived the colonialism. It created another sense of the presence of the church before the governance. And we cannot transfer the meanings, the values, from one reality to another reality. I have heard persons saying, even very educated, that what will happen in this country will happen also in another country. Later or soon, it will happen there. So the experience of her from her part, is transferred to another country. But it is not exact, because each country has his own history and the identity. And even though the globalization make things more similar, and the technology, for example, keeps us close. The cell phones are everywhere. Even the most remote town has a connection of internet and WhatsApp, but the experience of the reality is different depending on the place. That's why it is very important to pay attention, because we transfer the advantages, the developments of one culture, and we have to think whether there are really advantages, and we apply them to the new reality indiscriminately. This makes that the experience of the church in one place can be very different to another place. For instance, the founders, they have lived the experience of anti-clericalism, the rejection of the church by the governances, and even this experience is being continued in Europe in many places, and it is becoming stronger in some countries. It is not necessarily that this experience will be repeated in America or in other realities. can be, can in other realities will be worse.
o en otros lugares.
But
Puede que en otros
these
lugares
are
sea
realities
peor,
that are different.
distinto.
The interpretation of the realities
Son
in
realidades
one
distintas. Entonces,
place
el
with the
interpretar
criteria of
la
another
realidad de
place,
un país
even they are very
basada
intellectual, they are
en
not
historias de
suitable.
otros,
We have to be
es
aware
un
of, we have to be
error
conscious of, because if
intelectual.
not, we take for granted
Eso es importante tomar conciencia de eso. Porque si no,
that if
damos
the young
por
people here
sentado,
are like that,
take it for granted,
in another places the young people
que
are the
pues
same.
como aquí los jóvenes son así,
I remember
los jóvenes de otro país
in one of
tienen que
the
ser iguales.
international
Es
meetings
lo
of
mismo.
our Claretian communities, one
Recuerdo
sister
en
working
una
with the
reunión
young people,
nuestra
she was telling, the young
internacional,
people are like that, the
un
young
hermano
people
que
like that.
trabajaba mucho
If
con
the young
jóvenes,
people, they are not committed
decía,
socially,
porque
they
los
will
jóvenes
not
son así,
come to the church.
porque los
But I
jóvenes,
told her,
si no hay una
wait for a moment,
experiencia
these are the
de
young
trabajo
people from your
social, de
place.
justicia,
But
no
not
van a venir a
all
la
young
iglesia.
people are the
Espérate
same
un momento, esos
as
son los
you are
jóvenes de
experiencing in
donde
your
tú
place.
eres. Pero los
So in your
jóvenes que tú
reality,
eres no son los
this
jóvenes de todo el mundo.
is not a
Estás
normative
asumiendo
for everyone.
que tu realidad es la norma para todo el mundo y para toda la congregación.
We have to be aware
Y
of
eso
this
no es
to avoid generalizations.
entonces es bueno
What is
que seamos
bad
conscientes de
and what
eso
is
para que
good
no
in one
hagamos
place may not be the same in
generalizaciones
another place.
de lo que es válido
So this is the another aspect.
aquí en inglés. Entonces, otras variables
As we have said before,
condicionan la
the geography and the
como hemos
social
dicho ya,
place and
la
the concept of
geografía
family
y
influences the
el lugar
culture.
social, el concepto de familia.
That's why it will define, it will describe, it will give
Cómo
characteristics
es
for the
ese
environment.
ambiente social,
Because
ese
apart of the
ambiente
culture which is
familiar.
general, there are even
Porque
small
además de la
subcultures.
cultura
Every
general
family
de un grupo están las
have
culturas familiares
maybe
también,
specific
donde hay familias.
characteristics of
Es
living
una
and
cultura
sharing.
que se desarrollan con unas características
But
un
when we
poco
speak about
distintas
culture
de
here, we
otras,
speak
¿no?
about the general
Pero
parameters.
cuando hablamos de cultura social estamos
For
hablando
instance,
en
what is the
general.
sense of grouping
Otro elemento
of
es
the
el sentido del corporal, ¿no? Puede ser
there
que
can be a
tengamos
sense of discipline and of
un sentido del
order
cuerpo
among the groups, and
ordenado,
in another
disciplinado,
places
y
there
en
may
otros
be a
lugares
sense
es
of
más
very
espontáneo,
flexible
relajado,
sense
menos
of
inhibido.
belonging. In Africa,
Nos
we have
contaban las
heard
hermanas
the
de
dance
África, ¿no?
is
La danza,
very
la
much
expresión. Eso son
appreciated because the
características de
sense
una
of group
cultura
is
donde el
created by
aspecto
the
corporal
common
es muy
dance.
importante. Sin embargo, en otras
In other
culturas
cultures, it may be
eso
considered
puede
even not
percibirse
necessary.
como innecesario o incluso le
Taking
da
to dance,
vergüenza
taking to sing, may be not
el
considered
cantar o
important
bailar
for some.
expresiones,
Another aspect is the sense of
diríamos,
health
corporales.
of the dead.
Otro
For
aspecto es el
example, as
sentido de la
Sandy was
salud,
telling
la
about
muerte,
Peru,
contaba Sandy,
the recalling the
como
presence of the departed
para
is
ellos
a
en los
part
días de
of the
Todos los
living.
Santos el recordar a los difuntos haciendo un
How they
altar
live the
son
sense of death.
características
In Mexico, for
de
example,
cómo viven
the
el sentido de la
sense
muerte.
of the
Por ejemplo, en
celebration
México,
in the
el Día de los
all
Muertos es un
saints
día,
and all
es
departed,
una de las fiestas
all
más
souls,
grandes.
is very
Con
celebrated. Is
muchas
celebrated by
familias se van a los
food, by
cementerios
sharing, by
y hacen
gatherings.
casi como fiesta, llevan la comida a los difuntos que les gustaba el difunto. Hay un
This
sentido
sense is surely
eh,
rooted in their
que seguramente
ancestors,
está enraizado
but it
en
was
sus
kept and
culturas ancestrales
preserved.
de su
The
relación
sense of
con la muerte.
time and space is very
El
important
sentido del
aspect
tiempo y del
because
espacio
this is
es otro
considered
aspecto
something
que también
characteristic
pesa mucho
For some cultures, the time is very flexible, is more relaxed. For other cultures, the time is rigid, the time is important. In United States, if the meeting is at 8 o'clock, so for the American time would mean that sharp 8 we have to be there. If it is set at 8 in Latin American, so it will be 8:15 or 8:10. The consideration for time will be more flexible, and this can cause even difficulties in the mutual sharing when we live together. And when we talk about time, some people are saying what is to lose time. For some cultures, never we lose time, because all what we have lived is to gain something. However, in other mentalities, if I don't do exactly what I have planned, it is to lose time. And if I didn't accomplish my task that I have planned, I have a frustration. If somebody has interrupted me or visits came to see us without foreseeing, we consider it in some places as a losing of time. But the valuation, the value given to time depends on the place. The people sometimes, for instance, in regard to the place, become frightened when everything is closed. Other persons become frightened when everything is open, in wide. There are cultures that are more collectivistic and some individualistic. It is not to distribute better or worse culture, because the culture is as it is, but we have to keep in mind that there are these characteristics. And some people, they have both characteristics in one. Generally, you can see in this PowerPoint how to distinguish the characteristics of individualistic and collectivistic cultures. For example, the sense of authority in the collectivistic cultures is more high. In the individualistic culture, the concept of authority is more equal. The collectivistic culture is emphasized the difference between those who have authority and others. In the individualistic culture, there is more equality in sharing the responsibility. So imagine, yes, when we join the congregation, there will be always difference between somebody who enters and who is already advanced information. But generally, the sisterhood will not bring any difficulty. There is an equality given by the environment. In the collectivistic culture, the communication is different, because the communication is more indirect, is through the circle of the people. You can ask a group of persons, we have a gathering, you will come? And everybody will say, yes, yes, we come. And later, no one will come, because there is no clarity in why. Because for them, to say something in collective way, it is to give you a let down. No? They wouldn't tell you personally, I will not come, but they are covered by the collectivity to say, we will come or we will not, but no one is directly committed.
medio claro. Sí, bueno, vamos a ver. Como dicen, vamos a ver y nunca
If
vio, ¿no?
I am from one culture,
Entonces, para
I
el
am
que
of
es de una
culture that
cultura
is
de
individualistic,
carácter
for me will be
individualista, es
more valuable
preferible que le
to
digan, mira,
know
no, no
if
vamos,
somebody comes or
a
not.
que te digan que sí,
But
después no ven.
I should accept it because it is
Pero
culturally
eso es cultural.
defined.
El dejar la cosa como un poco así nebuloso,
For
un
the
poco
collectivistic
no
culture, it's
claro,
easier
y
to
no
bear
directamente decirte, mira, no tengo la menor intención
without
de...
direct
Eso
communication.
se ve feo desde esa perspectiva. Entonces, eso es un
When
tema
different
que es
cultures
muy,
are
muy
sharing in
crítico
the life,
cuando las diferentes culturas
this may bring
empiezan
conflicts
a
because
interactuar.
individualistic
El
person would
individualista
say,
dice, nunca
I
sé
don't understand
por
the
dónde
group,
van.
but the
Y el
collective
colectivista es como quien dice, yo pues,
group
más o
will
menos ahí se
always
guardan, tú
protect
sabes, de
their
no
common opinion.
confrontar. Eh,
In the collectivistic culture, if
el
somebody is not
colectivista,
invited
si tú lo
personally to
invitas
speak,
a decir
will
algo,
not
a
raise the
hablar algo,
voice
quizás
because
no lo
she or
dice.
he will feel
Es como una
the
falta de
cover
respeto.
of the group. In the
Mientras que el
individualistic
individualista
culture,
dice lo que piensa, como lo
everybody
piensa,
is
cuando
ready
lo
to
piensa.
participate and
Y
say
a
it
veces
without
no se
special
da cuenta
invitation.
que el otro está
When I have
esperando
done my
para decir
novitiate
algo.
in Colombia, and I am from
Yo
the
hice mi noviciado en Colombia
culture which is very
y
extrovertic
yo
and
soy de
very
una
much
cultura
communicative.
de mucho
And I was talking
extrovertida,
a lot
de
in the
hablar. Yo
recreation.
personalmente soy extrovertida.
I was very happy to
Entonces,
speak and
como yo
talk,
cantaba,
but the people were
hablaba.
not
Allí yo
speaking much.
encantada de haber
And in
llegado a
the
Colombia.
recreation time, I have
Pero veía que la gente no
asked
hablaba mucho.
why the
Y
people
un día en el
don't
recreo de
speak
mi
much.
noviciado dije, pero aquí
But
qué
one sister
poquitico
told
habla la
me,
gente.
yeah, we are waiting
Y
that
me
you
contestó
stop
una
for a
hermana,
while so we
estamos
can speak.
esperando que usted se calle.
Imagine, for me, for my culture, we don't need to wait to express
Claro,
because we
para
can
mi
express
cultura,
ourselves whenever I wish.
no hay que
But in the
esperar. Tú
collectivistic
sacas y
culture,
dices y
if
opinas.
no one
Mientras
invites,
que ellos tenían ese respeto, una
the
cultura
respect will be
más
manifesting by waiting
respetuosa en
until
ese
others
sentido, ¿no?
invite me.
Y estaban esperando.
So these are the
Pausa, ya
characteristics
llevaba
that
como 3 meses allí,
as
¿no?
exemplar.
Entonces, esa es la
The collectivistic
diferencia.
culture
La cultura
respect a lot
colectivista
of
valora mucho la
traditions
tradición,
and
las
the
personas mayores.
old people. The individualistic
Individualista valora
culture
mucho
prefers
la novedad.
novelty and initiatives.
La
The
colectivista
collectivistic
valora la
would not
paciencia, el
take
pensamiento
initiative
colectivo,
nor
no toma
responsibilities
decisiones
immediately.
individuales, sino es en grupo.
Individualistic will
El otro va
immediately
más a su
respond.
individualidad, a su
The individualistic will always claim
Eh,
her or his
el
rights.
individualista reclama mucho
The
sus
collectivity
derechos.
will
Una cultura
emphasize the sense of responsibility in the common.
El colectivista enfatiza mucho el sentido de responsabilidad. En inglés decimos el duty, lo que tenemos que hacer.
These are, as you see,
El sentido
many
del deber.
characteristics
Entonces,
which will
son
help
como
us
otras
not to judge
dimensiones que nos
others,
pueden
but
ayudar
to
no a
make
hacer
aware
juicios
ourselves,
sobre los
to
otros,
read the
sino
reality
a
of
tratar de
others and of ourselves
sensibilizarnos
in
de
this
la
perspective
realidad
of
de las
accepting
otras personas,
characteristics of
a quienes
the cultures.
la misma personas individualistas.
Yeah, there should be a moment to think where I am situated
Entonces,
there,
sería el momento de pensar dónde
where
yo
I am
soy,
inclined, where is my
hacia qué
character of
lado
my
me
culture,
sitúo yo.
which are the behaviors
Y por otro lado, la segunda pregunta, ¿qué
of others
comportamientos de los que no son
are
como
difficult
yo
for me
me
to be
cuesta
accepted?
más aceptar?
The sense of time, the sense of communication, direct
El
or
sentido
indirect,
del tiempo, la
the
manera de
sense of
comunicarnos de forma
verticality
directa
or
o indirecta,
horizontality, the
el sentido
responsibility
de la actitud
of
vertical,
initiative,
horizontal,
the responsibility of mutual
el
expression
sentido de
and
responsabilidad,
protection.
iniciativa.
So here I have to reflect for some time where I am from, what is my character,
hay ahí, pues,
what is my
una
vision. Am I
diversidad
more
de
collective or more
visiones,
individualistic
¿no?
type? Anyone wants to
No sé
ask,
si, como
or
estamos
I
en
leave it
tiempo,
just for you
si aquí
to
quieren
think? But I
compartir
repeat
algo, simplemente
that
se
the
los dejo para
important thing
pensar.
is not to judge
Pero repito,
others,
lo
but
importante no es
really
ahora hacer
become
juicios
aware
de los
of,
que no
because
son
maybe one
buenos,
of
sino
the
tomar
difficulties or some of our
conciencia
difficulties
de que quizás
come
algunas de esas
from the differences
dificultades
in
provienen
appreciating
de que tenemos
values which
diferente
from point of
apreciación
the culture
de las cosas.
are different. So
Entonces
what
pasamos
is
ya
telling
a lo que nos dice el
our
Papa respecto a la
Pope
diversidad
Francis about
cultural. Les doy
interculturality?
unos
You
segundos
have
para que
the
lean este
slide
texto.
in Spanish and in English. You can
Está en
go to
inglés y en
Spanish
español.
text and read for some time just to internalize. Thank you. And this is the last sentence of Pope Francis.
Muy bien, pasamos a la última frase del Papa.
We see how Pope Francis value the
Entonces,
variety
vemos
of
cómo
cultures,
el Papa
but this
valora
variety of
esa
cultures,
diversidad
we have to
cultural.
understand it.
Ahora, esa diversidad cultural hay que entenderla.
Okay, Sandra has raised the hand. Maybe she has a question.
Chiqui, Sandra había levantado la mano.
Okay, es que como yo
Let
tengo
us see what
el
is
screen,
the
no
question
puedo
of
ver la
Sandra.
gente que levanta la mano. ¿Qué quiere?
Sandra is asking
Sandra.
from Cuba.
Chiqui, es que
I did not understand
mira, es lo que pasa es
when you
que no
were
entendí
mentioning
al
about the authority
principio
and
cuando
in relationship
explicabas
between
acerca de la
the
autoridad
authority and collective and
el
individualistic type
colectivista y
of
el
culture.
individualismo.
What is the
O
connection
sea,
you are
no
speaking
entendí
about?
el sentido que le diste a una manera
The collectivistic
de
culture
ser y la otra, ¿no?
usually is
Bueno, el
hierarchic,
colectivista
is organized by
es
hierarchy.
jerárquico.
Si me pudieras aclarar un poquito
Sí.
acerca de eso.
¿Me escuchas?
It is
O sea,
easy. I will explain to
no
you.
implica retroceder mucho,
So,
sino avanzamos.
the
No, es
mentality
fácil.
of
¿Me escuchas?
collectivistic is
Bien.
hierarchic.
La mentalidad
So,
colectivista
very easily
Sí, sí,
accept
es jerárquica. Es decir, que acepta perfectamente
there is a
que haya unos que
sí, te
estén por
escucho perfectamente.
difference between
que
levels.
haya
Some
una
are up on the
desigualdad,
top
¿sí? Que unos
and some
estén
are
arriba y otros
down. There are
estén
persons
abajo.
that are
En el
old
sentido,
or they have
vamos a
authority
suponer,
and they
que
have
haya personas
advantage
mayores
over
que
those
por
who are
desgracia las
younger,
personas mayores
who are,
tienen una
for
ventaja
example, among us,
sobre las que
those who are
son
perpetually
jóvenes.
professed may be
Las que son
considered
perpetuas de muchos
higher
años
than those
tienen
who
una
have not
cierta
yet done the
ventaja
perpetual
sobre
vows.
las que
In
están
this
empezando.
collectivistic culture is
Eso,
very easily acceptable, this
eso
order
lo acepta muy
of the
bien y no
society.
tienen
Of course,
dificultad
time comes
con
that
eso.
always
Sí,
less this
eso cada
concept
día
because the
es menos,
globalized world
porque como tenemos un
bring us
mundo
to the
globalizado,
equality and very
esta
difficult to
nos
accept the
representa
lack of
cada vez más
equality among
dificultar
people.
el que, teniendo en cuenta el evangelio que nos dice que ya
Even
no hay
the
judío,
evangelical
ni hay
message, of course, there is no Jew,
cristiano, ni
Jew,
¿sabes? Lo que
no
dice Pablo,
Greek.
que todos
Paul
somos
already
hermanos.
said that we are
Ese
the
sentido
same,
de
we are brothers and
desigualdad,
sisters. But in some cultures, it is still being
cada
accepted,
vez más
and in
no
tradition,
se acepta.
the culture
Entonces, pero por tradición,
tolerate,
hay algunas culturas que
even
más o
sometimes
menos
promote
pueden
certain
tolerar,
order of hierarchic
incluso
organization.
es decir, dependiendo de dónde se sitúen, si están arriba o si están abajo, esa mentalidad que yo, porque la responsabilidad que tengo, por la edad
They
que tengo,
easily accept
te digo a ti, tú no
that
me puedes decir a mí,
this is a high position,
tú
so
no me
I
puedes dar
have
una
no right
lección a
to
mí, vamos a
correct
decirlo así. Tú no
my
me
superior.
puedes
I have
enseñar a
no
mí algo porque tú acabas de
right
entrar,
to
o porque tú eres
say.
más joven, o porque tú,
In
etc.
the group of
Si
the
yo estoy
collectivistic
arriba, ¿no?
understanding of
Y si yo
culture,
estoy abajo en una cultura
the
colectivista, eso lo acepto bien,
acceptance
lo doy
of
por
these differences in
de que esa
authority
persona es la que
is more
sabe, que es
bearable,
la que,
is
y yo me
tolerated.
pues. Mientras que en una cultura individualista,
The
eso no
level
se
of
tolera.
democracy and
O sea, hay
equality,
mucho más
and
sentido,
that
vamos a decir,
everybody is
democrático, de
responsible and that
igualdad,
everybody has to learn and
y en que
everybody
todos nos
can
podemos
learn
enseñar
from
unos
one
a otros.
another. This is, of course,
Ahora,
inspired by the
¿hacia dónde
gospel,
vamos en todo esto?
but
Desde el punto de vista
this
del
is
evangelio,
more on
sin saltarnos la realidad obvia de
individualistic
quien ha
culture.
vivido más y tiene más experiencia, tiene mucho que enseñarme y yo tengo que estar dispuesta a aprender. También
I have to
buscar que
learn
la
out
persona
of
más
the
joven me enseñe a mí
inspiration of the
también.
gospel and the example of
Algo
Jesus
ella me
that
puede
even
enseñar.
child can teach
¿Sabe?
me,
La capacidad de
even the
aprender
younger
unas
can
de
teach
otras.
me.
Y
But
sobre
this
todo el no
understanding of
pensar
culture
que
and
porque ya yo
equality
tengo cierto nivel
is,
o cierto puesto o cierta experiencia,
mm,
no puedo aprender nada nuevo.
is a
O que
process.
una persona más joven me pueda pues
I
ayudar
hope
con
this
algo
helped you to
que
understand the
yo
connection
no
between
domino.
collective and
No sé si eso
individualistic and
ayuda.
authority. Sandra is telling
Sí,
that
sí,
didn't
sí,
catch the
gracias. Ya es que
connection.
al principio
Thank you.
no había captado eso, pero sí, ya está claro.
So as we see,
Gracias.
there are things
Es decir, que
that
como
will
vamos
need
viendo,
to be enlightened by
hay
the gospel.
cosas que
And even
van a
though
ser
they are
iluminadas por el evangelio.
practiced and
Y aunque
they
sean
are
prácticas,
characteristics for my culture, they have to be enlightened by the gospel. For instance, the sense of time, yeah, there are cultures
Por ejemplo,
that they
hablamos del sentido
understand
del tiempo.
more
Ciertamente hay culturas que
relaxed
pueden tender
concept of time. But
a,
when we
a tener
live
un sentido
together
más
with
relajado del
others,
tiempo.
with the
Pero cuando
responsibility
esas
for
personas
the time,
conviven
there
con
must be
otras
a
personas,
mutual accord,
tienen
that
otro
mutual
sentido del tiempo,
understanding
tiene que haber
and
un
agreement,
mutuo acuerdo,
because when we don't accept
porque
others
puede haber
in
también una
their
falta de
necessity
respeto
of time,
respecto a
we
esas
can
personas
also fall in the lack
que
of the mutual respect.
tienen otro sentido del tiempo, vamos a decirlo así. Mutuamente
So,
puede haber
in
una
case
falta de
somebody
respeto,
is waiting for me
tanto por quien me hace
and
esperar,
I am not ready even to inform
sin
that
ni siquiera
I am getting
informarme o
late, so
avisarme,
for some cultures
como
will be the
quien no
offense and lack of
comprende
respect. For
que
others
quizás
will
yo
be
me voy a
something
tomar más
normal.
tiempo en
That's why the
procesar las
gospel
cosas,
should
en hacer las
enlighten
cosas.
the cultures
O sea,
always.
el
And
evangelio, y vamos a eso,
this
es
is
lo que va a
what will
iluminar
bring us
ambas
to the
culturas. Es
sharing
lo
in
que nos
life
va
in
a llevar a
fraternity,
lo que queremos llegar,
where we
que es
can
una
value
convivencia
and respect each
fraternal,
other mutually.
donde nos podamos
That's why
valorar
it's
y
very
respetar
important to
mutuamente.
understand the differences
Por eso es
between what
importante
is
comprender
multicultural and
la
what is
diferencia
intercultural.
entre
Multiculturality
multicultural,
is what you see in the square A, B, C,
lo
D.
multicultural es el
Four
cuadrado que
cultures
tienen ahí ustedes que
sharing
dice
together in their life.
ABCD. 4 culturas que
There is a
conviven
diversity of culture.
en una misma
Can be a
comunidad. Algo así,
society,
5 por 3.
can be a
Sí, ahí
population.
hay una
can be a
diversidad
town,
cultural.
can be
Puede
a
ser una
place where
sociedad donde viven,
Muslims,
no sé,
Christians, Mexicans,
mexicanos,
and Americans
alemanes,
are living together, but they are not
musulmanes,
interacting.
pero juntos, que
We
decimos
can
en español,
stay
pero
even
no
in the same
revueltos.
place, but it
Estamos
is
en el
only
mismo sitio, pero
multiculturality.
cada uno en lo suyo.
But the
La vida
interculturality is the
intercultural,
life
que es el otro
when
cuadrado,
we
es un
exchange
intercambio de
gifts.
unos con otros.
It's not only adaptations or just
No es solamente sobrevivir, sino
how do we say
construir
it? Just
relaciones
overcoming, no?
entre todos.
But this is something that requires a complicated
Pero para eso
skills.
hay que capacitarse, que es lo que estamos
The
haciendo.
goal is to reach a
Entonces,
communal
¿cuál es la meta?
culture which will be
Llegar a una
intercultural.
cultura de comunión
This is the third
intercultural.
square. This is the
Es lo
culture
que ven
E.
reflejado en el cuadro de abajo.
This is the
Esa cultura E,
new culture, fruit of the convergence of the mutual
la
accords,
convergencia
of the mutual understanding, of the mutual interaction, where we reach the point that through the dialogue, through the value, through the enlightening, we can say, and we can, for example, bringing it to the time, I can say, I will wait for you 10 minutes more. But if maximum time of my waiting will be 10 minutes, if you don't reach, so we can agree in certain points in the groups in order to share the life fraternally and confront the perspective with the gospel. And for our case, we have to confront it with the charism. So the cultural practice, the cultural value is this one. We can take it, accept it, but from the perspective of the gospel and charism, we need to process it. We have to evaluate it and bring together and enlighten by the gospel. In this process, there are 3 stages. This integration of the culture can have 3 different options. In relationship to the persons that we welcome in our community, it can be assimilation, incorporation, or incarnation. As congregation, we want to reach the point that our communities will become welcoming communities. It's not only the integration by imitation, adaptation, but in order to adopt, really, to adapt the style of living and being incorporated radically is inculturation, is the assimilation, is the internalization. Of course, it is mutual. We welcome the gift the person is bringing with her, and we want to offer her. And this is the work of this seminar, how to integrate the gifts of different cultures, of different persons, within the background of the charism. This demands the development of interculturality. this development of the interculturality, we have to develop the competency, the abilities, the skills to go and to process it. There are 5 stages, ways of dealing with. The first stage is the denial of the differences. The person is telling, this is only way to adapt. This is the only way of adapting. There is no tolerance to the differences, to the variety. Of course, this is happening always less and less, but it can happen that it may occur this idea of predominant mentality. The second stage is of the polarization of the self-defense, which comprehends also judgments and justification of one's culture. Sometimes it is from the side of the person who is adapting to the culture. This person is mixed up with the culture where she is adapting. She's losing her culture. She's unconsciously denying her own culture because she wants to fully adapt to the other culture. For example, I am becoming American, I am becoming Spanish, and I forget my own culture because I unconsciously think that it is less or it is not easy to be adapted. It's not a matter of learning languages. It is just, we point here, the point of the culture is considered as something which is making difficult the step towards creating fraternity. Where we want to reach, we want to arrive to the point where everyone in the community can share freely the riches. But this is a process to the integration. Eventually, what we want to achieve is to build community, is build a culture of the congregation, and that's why we have to think what are the tasks, what are the things to do in order to arrive to this point, what are the difficulties we have to face, what are the things we have to bring forth and make it confronting. It can happen that the sister is arriving from another community and is coming to my community in different culture. We can think about the thing which the community has to do to welcome that sister, and what is the task of the sister who is arriving. And also we have to think on the multicultural group in which community there is experience of sharing of multicultural riches, but they have to adapt to another culture in which they serve. So what is the dynamic of such a community? And what is the experience of the sisters who are living in their own country and they are used to living in that culture, but they have to welcome the sister from totally different cultures. So what are the tasks we have to face here? This can be a personal task and also the groupal task. So each person should recognize the values of the cultures, and we have to know the values, the language, the communication, the skills
sobre la
to develop the relationship.
Esto pues
I
requiere
would like to finish in this point
mucho
because this
más,
is the part we
pero
were
por ahora
thinking
creo que
to
ha sido
present as the
bastante.
introduction
Llevamos
about the
más o menos una hora
interculturality. Of course, it
en
needs
esto.
more
No sé,
deepening,
Yaola,
but it is
si
a general view
las que tienen
for
que
the
hacer el
beginning.
seminario pueden
We are
quedarse para
already
darles una
one
orientación
hour
o
and
si eso lo
something.
hacemos en otro
I
momento.
would like to know whether
Me
we
pueden
can
mandar
continue,
un WhatsApp.
and those who are working on the seminar will still remain and have some orientations. So let us think if we can
Ok.
continue for a
Yo
while.
necesito que me
There are
digan
still
por
some
mí mismo, por
slides
la
to
parte del
continue
seminario,
for those who are
que no son
directly
muchas más
working in the
slides, son como 5
seminar.
o 6 más.
We can keep on reflecting on our duties we have to make and our processes, personal processes, to radically change our approach to the interculturality and to the mutual respect of culture. But we often even don't pay attention. So that's why the awareness is the first step towards the intercultural process. We have sometimes
Bueno, ya
concept
ahí en el PowerPoint tienen
predefined
varias tareas a
and which
reflexionar sobre su
make
identidad
it
cultural
difficult
y
to reach
las
out
tareas que
others.
tiene cada comunidad
There are
para
people they
ir
are
pues
incapable
apropiándose
to
este
come out
proceso
and
hacia
to
una acogida
accept
radical,
others. So we have
hacia
to
una
work still on
integración
that.
de las diferentes
So
culturas
now we
a
pass to
través
the
del
aspect
diálogo
of
y
how
del
to
respeto. Lo primero
explore
muchas
the
veces
charism
es que
through
nos
the lens
no,
of the
la primera es
culture.
awareness.
That's why
A veces no
I
hay
place the
conciencia, no hay conciencia
pens of
de
different
algunas
colors
de las
and the lens
dificultades que nos encontramos.
focus on the
Yo tengo un concepto distinto, por
intercolored
ejemplo,
reality.
de lo
So
que, de
what
las
is the
diferencias,
approach
de lo
we
que
would
hablaba
like
Sandra,
to
¿no? Es decir,
suggest for the working of the
hay
seminar?
personas que les incapaces de conceptualizar de que
We will
todos somos
start
hermanos,
from
todos somos
Evangelii
iguales,
Gaudium,
¿no?
the
Todos
number
somos iguales.
129 and
Y vivir
131st. Pope
bien.
invites
Entonces
us
pasamos ya al
to
aspecto de
make
cómo
this process,
explorar el carisma a través del
to
lente
read
de la cultura. Y ahí ven el lentecito que puse
in the
sobre
light of faith
esas
what we
lápices de colores.
experience.
Así que vamos a
So we
mirar
read
al
here the
carisma
difference
que
between
ya ha
persons
sido
and communities can
profundizado
sometimes provide difficulties,
de diferentes
but it is
maneras.
the Holy Spirit to help us to make the integration of the gospel and culture. So the new synthesis which we are called to do, and through our seminar we want to do it
Está
even
traducido, creo,
with
también
the
al
light
inglés.
of the charism. This is a new synthesis we are called to do. I want to
Bien.
say this,
El Papa en Evangelii
that it
Gaudium
was called
nos
before
invita
inculturation,
a hacer este
but
proceso
to understand better
de
the
lectura
concepts, I place in the
desde la
PowerPoint
cultura a
some
hacer una lectura de la fe.
words that were used before. Inculturation, this is the anthropological term where the child is learning from the beginning this
Sí,
culture in which they live. The acculturation is the process of adaptation of the other's culture in the process of living. For instance, when the missionary goes to another country, he has to acculturate himself. There is always the
bueno,
concept
con
of
este texto a lo que
transculturation.
va el Papa es que el
It
Espíritu
is
Santo
similar
es el
to
que nos ayuda a
acculturation,
hacer esa integración del
but it is
Evangelio
referred
y las
to the
culturas, esa nueva
passing from
síntesis.
one
Eso es lo que estamos
culture to
tratando de
another.
hacer
But
con
the
nuestro
inculturation,
seminario
which is the term which we used a lot of
intercultural.
years,
Una nueva
this word
síntesis,
is
en este
of
caso no del Evangelio, es la
a
cultura, sino
theological
del carisma y
background,
la cultura.
and it is coming
Una nueva
from the
síntesis.
perspective of faith. It is not
Esto a
sociological
veces se ha
way
llamado
of understanding, but
inculturación,
theological.
pero para tener claridad de
Idealistically,
términos
it
es
starts
porque eso
from
lleva
the openness and listening to
temas
others.
parecidos. El primer término es
It
la
is centered
enculturación,
on the
y es
persons and cultures where we live.
cuando
It
el niño
requires
aprende su
dialogue,
cultura. Es el proceso natural de crecer y uno va
and
absorbiendo la
the
cultura.
evaluation of the
Está el término
cultures on the light of the
aculturación,
gospel.
que es
It
cuando
is
un
not
grupo
judgmental position, but
adopta la cultura de otro. Por
confrontation
ejemplo, un
position,
misionero
enlightening
que va a
with
otro
the
país
gospel. As for
tiene que
example, the
aculturarse
holy fathers of the
en esa
church were
realidad.
telling, find out the seeds of
También
gospel
está
in the culture,
la
because
palabra
these
transculturación,
seeds of the word,
que se parece
the
un
logos
poquitico a
spermaticos, are present
aculturación,
always
¿no?
in every culture, in every
Pero
human being.
simplemente se refiere al pasar de una
However,
cultura a otra.
more than
Y al término que más
inculturation,
nos
today we
interesa, que
speak
es de
about
inculturación,
contextualization.
que es
More than about
solamente
inculturation, we
una
speak about the
palabra teológica
contextualization.
que se refiere a la relación
And in the
entre
next
fe.
seminar, in the next workshop, we will speak about this again,
No en sentido
because
sociológico,
this word is being
sino
used more
teológico.
today. Because
Idealmente
inculturation, it speaks
con
about
la
like
escucha
one
y
direction way,
apertura al
one-way
otro.
process. But
Se
contextualization
centra
is
en la
more,
persona, en la dignidad humana,
is mutual,
requiere
is two-way
diálogo
process.
y una
That's why we would like to suggest
valoración
this method
de la
of
cultura,
contextualist
no
theology.
como quien juzga, sino como que descubre esa
In fact, there are
presencia de
different
Dios en
models
esas
of
realidades.
relating
Lo
cultures
que
and
decían los
faith.
santos padres,
You see the model
cubrir las semillas del verbo
seeing the
en las
figures
culturas.
before us.
El
The
logos espermaticos
blue ball
que
is a
decían
charism,
los padres.
the yellow and red are the cultures. How do they relate to one another?
Sin embargo,
The first model is
más que inculturación, hoy en día hablamos de
the translation
contextualización.
model, is taking
Y
the
lo que vamos a tratar de hacer
charism
en nuestro seminario
incorporated
es
in the culture, but
incluso
without
es un término que se prefiere
interaction.
hoy en día al de
Is like to
inculturación,
place the seed in the place,
sigue
but
siendo
without
un poco unidireccional.
pouring water, without leaving
Es a one-way process.
on another
Y
background.
contextualización es
It is like to extract the charism, place it in the other culture, but without interaction, just if possible, in a
entonces por
pure
eso vamos a
way.
proponer
This
un
has a lot
método
of difficulties because
contextualizado de
it is not
teología.
very easy to purify the charism from the elements of
Hay
culture in
diferentes
which it was
modelos de
born.
relacionar fe y cultura,
It is
o
not
fe y
easy
o
to
carisma y
separate
cultura.
the charism in a pure
Esto vamos a
extract
ver
of
en inglés, pero
the
yo voy a
inspiration
explicar en
of God.
español.
In the document of the church,
La
it
bolita
is
azul es el carisma.
described also.
Las bolitas
The second
amarillas
model
y
is
rojas
of
son las
adaptation.
culturas.
The
Entonces,
charism
¿cómo
is
relacionamos las dos? El
placed
primer modelo
in the culture.
es el modelo de, le llamamos
It
traducción.
changes its shapes. You see that the
Tomar el carisma,
blue ball
bolita
becomes
azul,
blue
y
square. There
tratar de
was a little
incorporarle en
accommodation,
una cultura,
there was a little
pero
adaptation.
manteniéndolo casi
So
intacto.
yes, this is the
Es
small
como si
seed
fuera el
spreading,
granito de maíz
but
que lo sacas
really
de
there is
una,
now
no sé
still
cómo se dice,
something to do.
tusa
You
de
see,
maíz,
the
y
arrow
lo
is
metes
going
en
from the
otro,
charism
¿no?
to
Ese
the
granito lo
culture.
sacas y lo pones
But
en
the
otro.
model which we
Es decir, tú
suggest
extraes
is the
el
model
carisma
of
de la cultura, de
contextuality.
los fundadores y todo, y lo
The
metes
arrows are
ahora.
in both directions. The first arrow
Esto
goes
tiene
from the
sus
culture to the
dificultades
charism.
porque no es tan fácil purificar
And
el carisma
from the
de todos
culture,
los elementos culturales.
so repeating
Como
now
si
that
fuera un
the
granito
arrow
de maíz.
in this model goes first from the culture to the charism.
Entonces, este modelo, que es el que más se
And
utiliza,
secondly,
incluso en
the
documentos de la
charism will go
iglesia,
to
etcétera,
the
etcétera,
culture.
tiene sus límites.
So the both
Otro
directions are
modelo es el
important.
de adaptación. Coges la bolita del carisma, pero al
But the
ponerlo en la
reality
cultura,
is the point of the
ves
departure.
que cambia un
This is
poquitico
the theological
la
method that
manera
is being
de
used for many
presentarse ese
years,
carisma. Ha habido
but
un
it
poco de acomodación.
is
Y es
inductive
como sembrar
from
una
the
semilla
reality
y sale una plantita
towards
que tienen
the
ahí la imagen.
theological
Hay algo
reflection,
distinto, cambia.
and not in an opposite way from the
Sin
concept of
embargo, es un
theology
modelo todavía
towards the
de
culture.
one way. La flecha, fíjense
The-
que va de carisma directo al
The
carisma.
first models, previous
El
models,
modelo que
were like
proponemos
applying a
es un
charism
modelo
to the reality.
donde hay dos vías. Número uno, el punto de
But
partida
here, the key
es de la
word is a
cultura.
dialogue,
Fíjense que
is the
la flecha número
mutual
uno va de la cultura
understanding
hacia el carisma.
dialogue between my culture,
El
my
anterior
values,
va
with
del
another
carisma a la cultura.
culture of
Punto
the
de partida
charism
es
and its
la parte
values.
carismática o el evangelio.
That's why we need to depart from the studying
Pero
of the
hay
reality
otro
of the
momento en que del
founders.
carisma se va a la cultura. Es decir,
In
que
the reality they
funciona
have lived.
en dos direcciones.
That's why it implies that we have to
Pero
study
la
a little
clave
bit
es que
from
se
our
parte de
culture,
la realidad,
the
se parte
codes,
del
the
carisma.
symbols, the
Esto es un
myths,
método teológico
the
que se viene
rites,
utilizando
the
ya
narrations
muchísimo
that will
tiempo,
help me
¿no?
to
Es un método
understand and interpret
diríamos
my culture. If
inductivo,
I don't know and I don't
inductive,
understand my culture,
desde la
I
realidad
cannot do this work in
hacia
the seminary. I have to depart from
la
my reality.
reflexión teológica y no al
Which
revés.
are the
Partir
codes,
del
the
concepto
symbols,
teológico,
the
del concepto carismático, aplicar.
significative elements that will give me
La
a
palabra
key
clave de
for
los primeros
understanding
modelos
and
es
reading of the
aplicar
charism,
lo carismático a un nuevo
which are the
contexto.
key interpretation.
La palabra clave de este modelo es el diálogo.
What narrations of my culture,
Entre mi
what
cultura
narratives of my culture reflect
y mis
identity
valores
I
con esta
am
cultura
part of?
carismática que también tiene
Each one has
elementos
to develop
culturales de la
her
época de los
own
fundadores. Por eso tenemos
them
que partir
in this
de
perspective,
un estudio
departing from
de
your
la
own
realidad
reality, as we have said in the draft.
sociohistórica.
That's why the contextualized theology depart from their culture. Shall we stop
Eso
for a while
implica que
just
vamos a estudiar,
to
pues, en nuestra
rest a bit?
cultura los
There is
códigos,
only
los
one more
símbolos,
slide,
los
so we will
mitos,
little,
¿no?
maybe just a moment of
que
reflection
me puedan ayudar a
to
hacer esa
allow
lectura. Si yo no
translators to
conozco mi cultura,
rest for a while.
no puedo hacer este trabajo. Tengo que partir de esas realidades. ¿Cuáles son esos códigos, esos símbolos, esos mitos que me van a dar una lectura distinta de nuestro carisma? Que me van a dar una clave interpretativa distinta.
Our task of the seminarians, of those who are writing, as in the materials is explained already, the departure points is the culture in which you live or in which you want to depart from. What is the context, on the context of culture in which you live, in relation to the topics you have chosen.
El proceso va a ser este. Reflexionar.
And try to find the hermeneutic keys, the interpretative keys, to read the culture regarding the topic you are analyzing and connected to
Ya
the
estamos en
topic.
el último slide, ¿eh?
If my topic is for example, renewal of the church, what are the elements of my culture will be connected to this topic?
Sì, molto bene.
What are the elements of my culture that I have to
Elen, ti stiamo
consider
ascoltando perché hai tolto
in
il...
relationship to the church? For example, what is the way of
Oh,
relating
se
of
va.
the culture
Son tre contatti.
with the church in my
Adesso
place?
Petronil.
What is the
Molto felice.
popular understanding of the church in my environment?
Mais la
What
connexion très
is
bon,
the
non? Aujourd'hui,
role
la
of the
connexion très
church?
bon.
Can be in favor of the understanding or
Voilà.
can be
Nous pouvons
in difficult
continuer.
position, because not all elements are helping
Ok,
to the dialogue.
continuiamo, va.
For example, can be elements of the evangelical
Entonces,
council which
la
are
tarea
not
que tienen que hacer en el
connected
seminario.
or easily to
Como
the
nos ha
values of the
explicado también
culture,
Lola en los materiales
maybe
que nos
in
han mandado,
contradiction.
el punto de partida, como decimos, es
For
la
example,
cultura.
the obedience will be
Y
very
estoy
much
mirando la
in
hoja que ella mandó.
confrontation in the society which is
Describir el contexto
individualistic.
cultural que estás usando,
So this is the idea we have to
relacionado con el tema que escogiste, ¿no? No
mutually
el contexto cultural en todas sus dimensiones, sino ir
in,
ya a
enlighten,
aquellas
put it
claves
in relationship between charism
interpretativas,
and the
claves
culture, or
hermenéuticas. Tú has
gospel and the culture.
identificado en tu
So
cultura
the elements I will
que
present
puedan
will
iluminar
enrich
y
the reading
conectar
of the
con el
charism.
tema, ¿no?
In the
Por
second
ejemplo, un
moment
tema
is
mío
to
puede
explore
ser renovación de
the
la iglesia.
topic on
Entonces,
charism that you
¿qué
have
elementos
chosen,
en mi cultura pueden
departing
hablar,
from the history
hacer
of the
eco a eso?
founders? What
¿Cuál es
are
la
the elements of the
actitud
society that
de
influence
mi
the
cultura
experience of the
respecto a
founders,
lo
and
nuevo
how they have understood the
o en el
response to this
contexto
reality? What are
exacto?
their
La
keys
relación entre la
to
iglesia
propose?
y
And
la
the third part
comunidad.
is the synthesis.
La
It is
valoración
the
de la
correlation
tradición.
between the topic you have chosen
¿Cuál es la eclesiología
charismatically and the
popular?
aspects of culture that you
Todos esos son
want to
claves que me
analyze. You
pueden,
choose some
y
aspects
puede ser que sean
that are relevant,
favorables
because
o
not
puede
all
que
you
sean
can
no
work.
favorables, ¿no? Eh, consagración, los tres votos. Puede que yo vea
Which
elementos
are
en mi cultura que no
the
favorecen
echoes of the
una
culture
lectura
towards the
de
charism,
algún punto
and
de
what is the
obediencia.
echo of the charism
Por ejemplo,
in the
claramente
culture. So this
el tema de
dialogue, we will keep this dialogue
tiene sus
mutual.
retos en una
What
cultura
is the
individualista, horizontal. Pero esa
enrichment,
cultura también tiene algo que
and
aportar.
what are the challenges maybe too?
Entonces, creo que esa es la idea, ¿no? Dejarnos iluminar y a veces retar, pero una cosa mutua, porque a la misma vez que el
Mutual
carisma y el
and
evangelio
movement, no? From the
cuestionan
value of the
ciertas
charism
posturas en
towards
mi
the
cultura,
culture, and from the
también
values of the
yo
culture
puedo
towards the
ofrecer
charism. So
elementos que enriquezcan
what are the
mi lectura
syntheses that you would like to
carismática.
present? I hope it is
Un segundo
understandable.
momento es ya una mirada a el tema carismático que he escogido. Partiendo primero de la historia.
So again, the three steps are clear, no? My culture, the culture and the values of the founders, and then synthesis for our days.
¿Cuáles son las claves
Is there any question?
de lo que yo entendí? Y finalmente es el punto de la síntesis de estas dos cosas.
So the conclusion is that we would like to achieve this work in which we are involved and continuously developing. We all live in the postmodern world, which is challenging the
en
life
esta
of the
pregunta
faith
que he
and of
presentado.
religious.
Ecos de ese tema
This is
surgen
also
cultura.
a culture in which we live, but we'll not stop on this in this moment. We want to focus on the different cultures we live in, and they are configuring our congregation.
Pueden conectar con el tema. ¿Qué aportes
So until
puede dar mi
here, I
cultura
have
o qué
prepared
amenazas
this.
hay en mi cultura respecto a ese tema?
In September,
Y
we will try to develop
viceversa, cómo
the
ese
aspect
tema
of the
aporta y
conflicts
reta también
in
a
the
nuestra
culture
cultura.
and the
Esta
possible
dimensión mutua
resolution of
entre
conflicts
ambos temas.
in the
Esto es
intercultural
el
process.
trabajo que queremos
I
hacer.
would be very happy, and it helped
Así que
me
el primer paso
if
es una
you
profundización
send me
de la cultura en elementos
questions,
que puedan conectar
or for example,
con
you describe me some
el tema
situations
carismático.
in which
Ahí es
you
donde
move and
queremos
you
partir. Después el
experience
estudio del
and
carisma, la
you
parte
feel as
carismática,
a
de los
threat
fundadores,
or
etcétera,
difficulty
etcétera, y la
to
síntesis de estas dos cosas, que es el
help
diálogo
me
entre
to
A y B.
understand. Don't write personally, you can just describe generally in one community
¿Hay alguna
happens
pregunta?
like that, but try to communicate. So thank you everyone, and we are concluding
Entonces, esa es la
everything.
conclusión, un trabajo que refleje
On
ese diálogo entre
dina.cortes
nuestro carisma y las
at
culturas.
claretianas.org.
Y también
And
hay que tener en cuenta
eventually, we
que
conclude by saying that
todos vivimos en
what
un
the
mundo
Vatican
postmoderno
II
que
supposed
es un
for the
reto
life of
a
the
la vida religiosa
congregation
y a nuestro carisma en muchos
by
sentidos.
applying the doctrine of the
Pero
renewal of the Church after Vatican
no nos
II
vamos a ir
in the
por ahí,
chapter
sino vamos a tratar de rescatar
1969,
la
as we
dimensión
celebrate
de las
50th anniversary
diferentes
of this
culturas
chapter.
que hoy en día
I think now we are called to make a new synthesis of the charism in the multicultural reality, working towards intercultural communities wherever we are and wherever our mission is. So thank you very much and have a good work. Greetings to everyone.
Y yo la quiere pasar en la sala común aquí y saludar. Ok, esperamos que venga en la sala común para saludar el grupo.
Primero en español y luego en inglés, first in Spanish and later in English. So thank you, muchas gracias por estar, porque yo creo que ha sido el primer tentativo y ha sido realizado. Ha habido hermanas que han querido conectarse y no han podido, pero no sabemos por qué razón. So I'm very happy that we have we are able to connect, and many sisters can connect and others not, but we have to improve. But this is the first attempt we did, and this is I am very happy of the results of that. Estoy muy contenta de los resultados de la conexión. I hope you have been able to follow English translation well, although sometimes it was quite heavy because of the speedy way of talking of Chiqui. En algunas situaciones no he podido llegar a tiempo porque Chiqui, como maneja los conceptos como si fuera el cochinillo, entonces a veces era difícil seguir, pero espero que ha sido fructífero. I hope it was good for everyone. So thank you, and special greetings for Beatrice, for Soledad, and for Helga, and for Roshani, and for Celeste, Amilvia, Sandra, Sandy, Lilian, Jinsi, Josiane, Petronil, and Vivian, and Geraldine, and everybody. Okay. So,
Yola, la reunión en septiembre se avisará la fecha,
sí,
¿verdad?
we will say the date of the program in September, que vamos a comunicar sobre el día de septiembre, probablemente también en torno al 18, 20, 22 más o menos. But we will send the date exactly.
Okay. Todas espero que sepan quién es su acompañante. I hope everybody knows who is going to accompany them in their research, and you are already in contact with them. Y ya están en contacto con ella.
Está trabajando, sí, está trabajando.
Sí, muy bien. Uh-huh.
A todos, saludos, felices fiestas, buenas noches a todas que duermen y a todas las que empiezan el día, feliz día. So to all those who are going to sleep, good night, and those who are beginning the day, have a good day and greetings. Thank you. Chiqui, gracias muchas por tanto contenido. Thank you, Chiqui, for the content. That was too much.
Okay. Bueno,
gracias.
Adiós.
Y salutaciones.
Gracias por tu traducción.
Y gracias también a Petronil por la traducción al francés. O sea, estamos inaugurando la plataforma. Es nuestro primer...
Ahora la